It's safe to say the end of 2013 wasn't kind to Microsoft. They were trying to restore their reputation after the disastrous pre-launch at E3, which made Sony the winner of the console war that generation before it even began. And there weren't many exclusives to justify picking the Xbox One over the PlayStation 4, with the only big name standout being Forza Motorsport 5. The series had a long stretch of consistent critical acclaim, but slowed down after the 5th title. It was still a decent follow-up with the way it plays. Cars look stunning, you could walk around all of them, and it had the Top Gear trio describing the events.
If you disagree, you're wrong.
But because it was a launch title, they had a hard deadline to meet, so they had to choose between quality or quantity. Either showcase what this new console was capable of graphically, or essentially make an Xbox One port of Forza Motorsport 4. They chose quality, which meant there wasn't much overall content as players would have expected from a title in the main series, with a lot of planned DLC before release annoying players even more. So it left a lot to be desired. When a franchise releases games that frequently, especially by the 2010s, there isn't much room for evolution. By 2014, Microsoft wanted to make it clear the Xbox One was a video game console, obviously, but they planned to release more exclusive to get your attention, including the Halo Master Chief Collection, Sunset Overdrive, Rare Replay, and Sea of Thieves, to name a few, as well as making the console backwards compatible with certain 360 titles. I admit these compilations got my attention enough to at least consider picking the Xbox One over the PlayStation 4 back then. Like I'm holding 40 games in both hands right here, though the latter with their exclusives were too strong to resist. In fact, 2014 wasn't the strongest year for gaming in general, but one franchise that was always a safe bet critically and commercially was the Forza franchise, with Horizon 2 released that year. After amping up the number of cars on a brand new map set between the border of France and Italy, it got players excited for what a follow-up to Motorsport 5 would look like now that Turn 10 had the foundations for the 8th generation set to go. And rightfully so, it's a very good open world racer that marked a quick return to form. I know these two were made by different developers, but I'm talking about the Forza brand as a whole. That and Xbox, things weren't great the last 12 months. To start 2015, Forza Motorsport 6 was announced at the North American International Auto Show alongside the unveiling of a new Ford GT, which was the mascot on the front cover for the new follow-up, along with newer versions of the Shelby, Mustang, GT350 and F-150 Raptor. So like the McLaren partnership in Motorsport 5, Ford was the manufacturer front and center. The GT also continues the tradition of being a concept car to appear in the game before it went into production. This is a surprisingly cheap car too, in-game specifically. And finally, this makes the Ford GT the only car on the front cover in both a Forza Motorsport and Gran Turismo game. Series director Dan Greenwald called this game 10 years in the making, a culmination of everything that we love about the series, whether you're a single player or multiplayer fan. Quite a coincidence considering this month marks the 10th anniversary of Motorsport 6. At E3 that year, they included a demo of the Ford GT on a new circuit in Rio, Brazil, as well as a wet circuit and another set at nighttime, which were huge visual changes from its predecessor, more than just extra circuits and cars. And it wasn't as simple as making the circuits a little more slippery. They wanted to recreate what those conditions felt like when you were the driver and the rising tension, since wet weather racing is a lot more dangerous, obviously. The developers tested 150 surface types at the Nürburgring to see how different wet surfaces and hydroplane reacted to the tires, with one developer claiming it had 590 different puddles, all placed in positions where the water would pool on a rainy day in real life. Same with night racing, they didn't want to make the day racing a little darker. You played as if the weather is cooler, it was a lot less visible and feels more claustrophobic. And other requests including longer races and a better driver tire system where they didn't have to collide demolition derby style on the first corner. Forza Motorsport 6 was released for the Xbox One on September 15, no 360 ports anymore. Microsoft were completely dedicated to the current generation, as well as the PC for the first time, releasing the Apex version a year later, a free demo to see if the game's engine can handle PC hardware at that time. Today, easy peasy. But this was the first PC release for the franchise, effectively making the series multi-platform, though for these reviews I'll always use the Xbox versions.
Why do we race? Is it to prove how fast we are? How far we can go? Do we race to find our place? To test our beliefs?
I'm sorry, that was a rubbish intro. What does that even mean? That's the thing with sim racers by this point, not just Forza Motorsport. They've gotten so pretentious with how clean and stylish the menus look that if you dare left a wrapper on the ground, you'd be physically thrown out of the building. But with motorsport being an expensive business, teams and circuit organizers like to show they're a high quality business. It's more professional and enticing for sponsors and other marketing opportunities, if that makes sense, and it carries into the games as a result. Me personally, I like how straightforward it is, especially when selecting a car and track in free play. It almost catches you off guard by how much content there is, which I'll get to. But a lot of players consider this boring and soulless, and that's fair, especially as a lot of games of racing and sport in general have similar basic shapes and colors. Especially in the menus, they all look the same, which eliminates any real personality it might have had from the first couple of titles in the 2000s. The soundtrack was composed by Kaveh, Cohen and Michael Nielsen, and once again original to the game on and off track, which means I can use it for this review without worrying about YouTube striking this video with a copyright arrow. In the main menu it's decent, and that symphony is soothing, while on the track it sounds like I'm in a car chase evading the cops rather than against opponents in a closed legal event. Though the default volume on track is so low, I forgot there was music, only when you pause it. And that's all I can come up with because it sounds very similar to the Motorsport 5 soundtrack.
But this is the future, and this is a Formula E car, a completely electric space-grade single-seater with its own race series endorsed by the FIA.
Also like that game, the descriptions of the vehicle category are narrated by Top Gear's Richard Hammond and James May.
Fast, famous, rare, and expensive. These are the exotic GTs, the cars we gather around at motor shows, the ones with prancing horses and fighting bulls on their badges.
But not Jeremy Clarkson. Oh no. Anyway, that's because he was suspended by the BBC on March 2015 for allegedly punching a producer, and his contract wasn't renewed. Hammond and May decided not to renew their BBC contracts either, and of course sign with Amazon, create the Grand Tour, and the rest is history. So they must have recorded their lines for these events just before their contracts expired.
Because if you don't finish a touring car race with battle scars and a missing mirror, you're doing it wrong.
The visual descriptions of championships isn't as stunning, but at least we got Hammond and May describing them. That alone is good enough for me. You can recognize those voices anywhere and they know their cars. It's just entertaining to listen to them talk about cars.
V8 supercars are loosely based on four-door sedans, and they only race down under, which makes them as unique as Aussie rules football or kangaroos.
Additionally, the Top Gear test track returns, and the Stig's digital cousin. Some say it would have been a very awkward situation for the developers making this game while all of this was going on. Sacking of Clarkson, are they allowed to put him in this game? Will the other two appear as well? And that what we got in the end, this Top Gear branding is not the same without the whole band together. You can clearly tell the parts that were intended for Jeremy to record were cut, like the intro, or when the Stig's digital cousin is being described by someone I don't know.
Some say he hangs his laundry up with JPEGs, and that he thinks Bluetooth is a pirate.
Still, could be worse. They could have had Chris Evans instead. All we know is Turn 10 saw the writing on the wall, because with the whole trio gone months before Motorsport 6's release, you can tell they were trying to milk whatever value the brand still had. It's crazy this was over a decade ago now, given the success they've had on Amazon.
What was I thinking of?
And on that bombshell, let's move on.
The cars that can hold their own against the world's most exotic machinery without sending your bank manager into cardiac arrest. With astonishing acceleration and enough grip to peel tarmac, they offer serious bang for your buck. And you might even see one in the real world, not just in music videos.
Once again, you start off with a car on the front cover and a giant U circuit set in Rio de Janeiro. Different from the OG Xbox title, just showcase the best of what to expect from this game. Shiny interiors and undeniably stunning views from the top of a mountain. And after that first race, you select your first car and enter the introductory volume. Another set of mostly other new circuits like Lime Rock and Circuit of the Americas. The career mode is called Stories of Motorsport and structures itself in chapters, which are a set of circuits, and you choose over a small set of vehicle types to compete in. And completing at least one unlocks another series, another category that can be based on region, night racing, or wet weather. At first it can feel more closed off since you're forced to go from one series of circuits to another, a linear pathway. And because there are 15 chapters, it only takes 15 championships total, only 20% of total competition to reach the pinnacle of motorsport per se. And to 100% the entire thing, you need to redo the series multiple times with a different vehicle type. Literally the same circuit calendar with 6 vehicle types each. That sounds unbelievably tedious, and once I noticed it had the same calendar, I was like, to hell with that. However, with that said, at least if you stick to the story, pun intended, it is an improvement. Some races at the beginning go even longer than they need to, but even a few hours in, I was barely racing on the same circuit more than once. Unlike Motorsport 5, where it felt like you've driven on every circuit in the entire game just on the first championship. But like Motorsport 5, you have showcases thrown in the middle of each series as well, and has much higher variety in terms of the different types of racing, both time and category wise. One moment you're racing the Indy 500, next thing you're racing an IMSA GT Championship car around Watkins Glen. That's what I call a time capsule. And there are a lot of types of challenges like endurance races, cone challenge, overtake challenge, similar to Project Gotham Racing or driving missions in Gran Turismo 4, if it had difficulty options. And these type of events have their own career mode category as well, one for your garage and another for rental cars to allow for different game modes and special vehicles since these events provide them for you. And you can do as many of the showcases as you want. So when you combine the showcase and regular chapters, being able to complete them all gives over 70 hours of total gameplay. It is very big, but the fact championships need to be repeated so often with the same calendar hurts it. So you have every category type you can ask for on both career branches, as long as you're driving on a different circuit with a different car often though, that's the real objective. I'm sure with the amount of criticism Motorsport 5 received for not having enough cars and circuits, the first thing the developers wanted to do was correct it. There are 29 total environments with over 100 variations all over the world, including all the circuits from Motorsport 5 like Prague, Long Beach, Spa, Yas Marina, and brand new ones like Rio, Lime Rock, and real life ones including Monza, Kota, Watkins Glen, and Daytona. I always thought the latter was in at least one of the 360 titles, but most of the ovals in those games were fictional. And I spent a lot of time at Daytona and Gran Turismo, and Daytona USA. So it caught me off guard when I discovered this circuit made its Forza debut in Motorsport 6. There are a few that could have been included as well, like Maple Valley or Suzuka, since they were staples of the previous generation, but it's not an annoyance this time, because when you have more circuits than Motorsport 4, again, it felt like I was driving on a different one each time the first few hours of gameplay, so fair play for increasing the circuit count. It's the same story with the number of cars. In Motorsport 5, there are 325 vehicles if you include DLC, whereas Motorsport 6 has 450 without DLC. It includes every vehicle from Motorsport 5 and Horizon 2, and crucially, all its previous DLC as well. So there's more than enough in the showroom that it can't be a criticism anymore. That being said, Motorsport 6 still depended heavily on DLC. There were plenty of car packs released over the years, but the big ones were the Porsche and NASCAR expansions, back when the licenses to both these brands were exclusive to other gaming franchises, and also included a new circuit. Unfortunately, as you'd expect being a decade later, it's impossible to purchase it today. Only available 4 years after the release of Motorsport 6, which is ridiculous. And because I bought this game after the DLC was delisted, you're looking at footage from Motorsport 7 so I can demonstrate what it includes, since all these cars are standard in the base game, which also indicates that at least they're not gone forever. I'll be curious to know if I say the same thing when I review Motorsport 7 in the future. They too have DLC no longer available, but it's standard in Motorsport 8. Probably.
Bruce McLaren's motto was no compromise. This philosophy would carry over to the McLaren production team, who are obsessed with perfection and quality.
Forza Vista also returns, so every car in your garage can be walked around, interacted with, open all the doors and flaps, hop in and start the engine. They all look exquisite. However, it's getting to a point where you can tell the models pre-2013 look like Xbox 360 ones imported and upscaled for the Xbox One titles. They don't look as shiny or detailed when scrolling through the dealership, as if the bodies are made of plastic. Like noticing the difference between standard and premium models in the Gran Turismo titles on the PlayStation 3. Now, because every model has an interior unique to every car in this game, it's not as obvious. I still love to walk around the cars and view them from different angles.
Celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Le Mans win, the 2017 Ford GT, like the original, merges racing tradition with modern technology.
Again, I take back what I said about Motorsport 5 not having a paint car option. Final customization is here, and apart from a few extra shapes and sponsor decals, as you can tell, Formula 1 liveries tend to be my biggest inspiration whenever I demonstrate this feature for the Forza reviews. Whenever you purchase a car, they're automatically upgraded to the highest possible performance of the class ladder, so what you choose is more influenced by what you like than being objectively better, since the whole playing field is even performance-wise. And the difficulty setting and driving aids work the same way, along with the way you get paid out, and the leveling system is identical to the rest of the series, including manufacturer loyalty, so I don't need to repeat myself. The only addition is the prize spin, taken from Horizon 2, where even though you get to choose when to stop it from spinning, because spots randomly each spin, it's as rigged as you'd expect. I only got one jackpot the entire playthrough, though still got some very good cars in the process. Another addition similar to perks, also taken from Horizon 2, are mod cards. They give you little performance boosts that can be purchased or earned. Only difference is a lot of them can only be used for one race, so you need to think carefully about the best time to use them, and also include stairs, which decrease the performance of a car, whether it's turning off the traction control or reducing the power, but obviously give you a higher payout bonus if you win. This honestly feels like an afterpoint, because at no point did I feel like I had to depend on them, especially when you have difficulty options that are just as effective. I can imagine these working better for multiplayers, where players are likely to give you more of a challenge, for better or worse. As long as they're not microtransactions or loot boxes, then it's fine. I mean, it's not like Microsoft would make much money off them anyway. Speaking of other drivers on the track, according to Dan Greenwald, they tried to fix the driver task system by giving you the option to change the professional levels of the opponents. So instead of either ramming you from behind or swerving all over the place, the game prevents them from behaving like that. So, does it work? Well, initially yes. Literally the first race after flicking the less aggression switch and increasing the difficulty, I was less likely to smack into an opponent, and it made overtaking them more satisfying. But by the time I unlocked another chapter, slowly but surely they go back to being the terrible race drivers we come to expect from the Forza franchise as a whole. I understand their intention. It is a good idea. The game analyzing the way you corner and overtake is recorded every race. So when you return to the circuit, the opponents have a better idea of how you go around these corners and react to it. So you're competing against a different AI every race and alters the difficulty naturally. Great idea, just poorly executed. I don't know if it's a reflection on how bad players are at racing games. No offense. And while it's admittedly better than opponents not recognizing you at all, their incompetence sticks out like a sore thumb as soon as the first corner. It's like they're completely oblivious to your presence until the last second, like, whoa, where did you come from? They try way too hard to recognize you on the road or protect their position. You get brake checks so often. The only positive thing I can say is their willingness to overtake you on straights keeps you on the edge at high speed. That said, their incompetence only stands out for one lap. After that, you can just think about the joys of driving these cars and how well they control. You can feel the unique vibration of the Xbox controller as you pick up speed and change gear. And it doesn't just stop vibrating when in the middle of gear changes, it does a different type of vibration, and as you rev harder, as the speed picks up, it vibrates harder. Yes, I know I'm sounding too suggestive right now, but that's the best way to describe it. The vibration is also unique based on the road surface itself. Prague, for example, has a few bumpy roads made of stone. Rio, the same thing. This corner isn't 100% smooth, with curbs and tram lines making the surface a little bumpy. I always liked how the Xbox controller feels when driving these cars, which are another way to make the experience feel more authentic. Combined with the engine noises, the interior view, there's still a sense it's a love letter to cars and putting them in the coolest environments possible. Again, like Prague, you get plenty of spectacular views in the background and always like to put it on full display in front of you, providing an epic scope. This was around the time Rio were about to host the Olympics, and you get that sense without necessarily showing any Olympic logos. This scope can apply to other circuits like Daytona, for example, with all the lights surrounding the oval. It feels huge, as well as graphical enhancements that made Motorsport 5 stand out on the Xbox One, like a shiny sun, the dashboard reflection on the windscreen, leaves falling off the trees surrounding the Monza circuits, or the wind generating dust on those sandy circuits. That shot of an Indy car flying down the hill at Laguna Seca with those camera angles, sun shining, and all the skid marks on the tarmac blowing away that dust is a work of art, all while running at 60 frames per second in-game without a hiccup. It's attention to detail like this that makes games like this age very well decades down the line. Now, it's not perfect. You can clearly see texture pop in from the grandstands. The reflections around the car, while very accurate to the surroundings of the circuits, the rear view mirror, they move at 30 frames per second while it's 60 FPS outside. The replays are still 30 FPS too. It must be something the Xbox One couldn't handle perfectly just yet. Like it needs more than one generation to pull it off eventually. I haven't played Motorsport 8 yet, so I don't know if they did it or not. It feels weird to say the graphics have aged a little bit in an Xbox One game, especially one that's a graphical showcase for the console exclusively, but it is easy to forget it's been a decade now. It's still a gorgeous racing game for its time. The wow factor of next-gen graphics had settled by this point. They didn't need to focus too much on improving the graphics, since the requests to add more content were loud enough as it is. To spread the pack on the grid with more different tracks, having more choice in the showrooms, and changing the weather. I've already talked about wet weather in Horizon 2, the first to introduce something beyond the car itself that affected the driving mechanics. It helps the work Playground Games did with Horizon 2. They can transfer it to this game and improve on it with closed circuits, which equal more detail. And it's not just a more slippery road than dry tarmac, but puddles are scattered all over the road like a Mario Kart obstacle where driving through it can aquaplane. Particularly on circuits with plenty of elevation like Brands Hatch and Spa, for example, where they're more prone to puddles on the road. Spa day indeed. Oh, and graphically, it looks spectacular. Whether you have the interior view selected, seeing a lot of raindrops land on the windscreen being wiped away like that, or the chase cam collecting raindrops blurred out slightly, and it's not distracting. It's so satisfying to watch the first time you play this game. You almost wonder why it took this long for the series to introduce wet weather, given how common it can be in real-life racing. Must be due to graphics and memory. You can only handle so many different weather types, especially if you want to make the most detailed-looking racing game. Take Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec and 4 on the PS2 for example. They had wet options, but it was only one circuit, or a game that's focused on one championship. One set of cars like WRC or F1 can use the space to have more unique weather for every circuit. Even in Motorsport 6, not all the circuits have every weather type, like don't expect Yas Marina to have puddles on the road, but then again, the F1 games did. And maybe having wet weather this extreme and this extreme only might be overkill. It's not like the dynamic weather system introduced in the F1 series in 2010 where it varied depending on your surroundings and creating a dry line over time. Speaking of F1, if the FIA caught the circuit organizers green flag a race in these conditions, they permanently banned the circuit from hosting any races whatsoever. But it's good to finally have weather settings in a video game to add a little extra variety and become another showcase of what the Xbox One is capable of graphically, because this looks exquisite for something that was released a decade ago now. And of course, another big addition is racing at night. Again, Forza Motorsport 6 wasn't the first in the series to introduce night racing. The first Motorsport title on the original Xbox already did it with the Tokyo Circuit and Pacific Shipyards, as well as the day and night cycle being implemented in Horizon 1 on the 360, but it was the first to give you the option on multiple circuits. Unlike the Horizon titles, racing at night is exactly that, really dark. If there was no lights, it'd be pitch black. It's genuinely almost impossible to see what's ahead playing this on my OLED TV. And I mean that in a good way, of course, because that's a more accurate representation of what it's like to drive when it's completely dark. Driving through the Nürburgring, for example, I have a lot more respect for endurance drivers now racing flat out without crashing when this is their vision nearly half the time. Like the wet weather, the only disappointment is not every circuit having a nighttime option. And nor is there a combination of wet and night weather, only one or the other, and more of them including neither than I expected. Again, developers only had so much time to make this game, adding night and all the lighting effects that came with it. It might be the main reason for all the criticisms with Motorsport 6, which fortunately aren't many. You get the sense they used most of their time fixing the biggest complaint about Motorsport 5, so the career mode feels more like an afterthought, something they left in the last month of development. But that's what happens when you make a sim racer every 2 years, not every 5 years. Like a lot of gaming franchises in general, there isn't going to be much evolution, just a mild improvement, something so little that it's easily noticeable. But putting that into perspective, is that really a bad thing? Because all the cars here look and drive solidly, the circuits are gorgeous, and you get a lot more of it than Motorsport 5. So I do recommend Motorsport 6, just avoid trying to 100% it. I know it cuts a significant chunk of gameplay, but if you're an adult, you have better things to do. But the way you progress through the career mode with being able to earn and drive the fastest cars a lot more quickly, particularly in the showcase event, it was very enjoyable overall. Though, I'm curious to know if Motorsport 7, with all the content from this game included and then some, does it make this game paperweight as well? Thanks everyone on Patreon, including Anthony Costins, Bibbs, Brittleback, Cooper Munn, Darcy McIntosh, Emmanuel Figueroa, Atmosphere, Gregorius Shampaska, Indie DM, Night Kid Gaming, Oscar, Peter GT, Ruben Perkolk, Sam Sneed, Tickford45, Thomas Rosendale, Will Stokes, and everybody for watching this review. Spenny out.